Hi, you've tuned in to Radio Northern Beaches, your Listen Local station, right here on the Northern Beaches of Sydney. You can find us on your radio dial at 88.7 and 90.3 FM. Can't get to a radio? No worries. You can always stream our program live from anywhere in the world at rnb.org.au. And for listening on your own schedule, our podcasts are available globally at rnbpodcast.com.au. So be sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Now, here is our latest podcast.
Hello again, listeners to Community Radio Northern Beaches, streaming live on our website www.rnb.org.au. Our program is Oz Music. I'm Michael Lester, and what a delight, listeners, today to have him joining us on the line here in Sydney, the legendary, some might say iconic even, Australian rock musician Ian Moss. Ian, of course, became well known to us all with his days in Cold Chisel. Since those days, he's moved on to an incredible career, developing his musical talents and abilities as a songwriter, as a singer. He started out as a guitarist, we'll see, and he's still very much an active contributor to the local music scene. In particular, Ian's going to be appearing here on the Northern Beaches in Manly at North Head, which is the fourth annual event of Night at the Barracks. Ian's going to be appearing with Mark Seymour on Friday, the 26th of September in the evening, listeners. So the Night at the Barracks event, as we well know, the fourth year running here in Manly, it's running over 4 weekends from Friday the 13th, the 12th, of September, right through to Sunday the 5th of October, over 4 weekends. It's a great. Ian Moss, thanks so much for taking the time to join us on Radio Northern Beaches, Ian.
Hello, Michael. Yeah, I was glad to be here, mate.
Ian, you're going to be appearing alongside another legendary musician, is Mark Seymour of Hunters and Gatherers. Have you and Mark worked alongside each other much in the past?
Hunters and Collectors, Michael. It's more in recent years that we've appeared on festivals, things like Red Hot Summer or the occasional gig here and there. In the early days, of course, when Hunters and Collectors and Cold Chisel, I guess, were sort of belting around the circuit around the same time in the early 80s there. Got to work because they're a headline act in their own right, of course. Passed like ships in the night, a roadhouse somewhere, airport somewhere, but probably never on the same stage at the same time.
Is there any sort of complementarity, similarity between what you guys are doing these days? Because presumably back in the day, when both of you were star headline acts, it was basically a hard rock scene. Is that what you guys are going to be dishing up here in September?
I suppose so, yeah. I mean, Mark still does a lot of Hunters stuff, which is kind of hard-edged pop, really. Great melodies, maybe with a slight tilt of the head towards the Nick Cave style of things, and I mean that in a fully complimentary, great way. And for me, yeah, I'm always got my hat tipped towards rock and blues, but I'm always aware of singing hopefully a half decent story and having plenty of catchy melody.
Indeed, melody is a key theme of what you do, not least on the guitar, but also with your voice and your songwriting and the songs. You had, I think, what seemed to me an interesting early background, both in your upbringing, I guess maybe influencing your playing, I don't know, because I believe that you were raised, were you, in Alice Springs?
Yeah, born and raised in Alice. Quite a few decades ago, in a time where radio was just one station, the good old ABC. But the good old ABC played a lot of good stuff. I used to hear all the early influences. Obviously, there's plenty of country music, but they certainly weren't shy about playing all the bluesier. Black R&B stuff, Ray Charles and Sam Cooke in particular, two standouts that play all their material. Who's starved, given the isolation. But it's amazing how the power of music can reach out beyond technical limitations.
Did you at that stage pick up your guitar and actually engage with music and with other musicians, or did that come later once you moved out of Alice, I think, to Adelaide? Is that right?
Adelaide eventually. I sort of finished off the last year of high school in Adelaide. But no, in Alice, I was obviously loving music and sort of hassling my parents to get this record and that record, and particularly there's a guy called Johnny Horton. Yeah, Battle of New Orleans is the big one for me. Sycamore Tree, Sink the Bismarck, and all. Yeah, great, vibrant songs. And I'd be going down the record store. Oh no, I haven't heard of that one. And so you did the single record store, Murray Neck Retrovision, I think was the place. So you'd put in your order. These days we can get something delivered from fucking the other side of the world in 2 days. Back then you couldn't get a record from Adelaide for about 4 weeks. But you certainly grew to appreciate the meaning of delayed gratification.
So when did you pick up a guitar, and what inspired that?
Well, actually, classical piano was my first instrument. I think I was 5 or 6, maybe 7 at the eldest. My older sister, my late older sister, unfortunately, was well advanced in classical piano, so I went down that route. I got my grade 2, but unfortunately, I kind of regret it a bit now. I just wasn't interested enough, but I did at least learn some real good rudiments of music, which helped me when I started. My older brother was strumming a pretty good, mean, acoustic guitar and strumming and singing a pretty mean Bob Dylan. And then, I gave up the piano. I didn't even think about playing anything. And somebody told my mother, this kid, I think he's got a bit of talent. You should push him onto something. So she suggested I take up the guitar. And so I was about 11 by the time I started on guitar.
But how did you find your way into Cold Chisel?
Well, yeah, by that stage, I'm a teenager, 16, 15, 16, 17. When I first started learning guitar, I was learning off a wonderful lady called Sylvia Davenport, and we were learning the fabulous Hank Marvin stuff, having a crack at a few Shadow songs and simple versions of instrumentals like Guitar Boogie. I'm 12 years old, and suddenly, the whole world flipped on its head when suddenly there was Jimi Hendrix and Cream and the whole psychedelic and heavier rock thing hit, like a bolt of thunderbolt. But it was like, wow, what is this stuff? So that's when I started getting into turning up amplifiers till they're distorted and looking for pedals. So I was all prepared to go hard rock. And then who else was I? Hendrix, and I was writing to Alvin Lee from 10 years after.
Yep.
The most famous track for him was I'm Going Home from the Woodstock live recording. In Alice Springs, there weren't a lot of, certainly didn't have YouTube. You had to rely completely on your ear. There weren't a lot of players around. It was like, how the hell can you play that fast? How do you do that? And for anyone into guitar parlance, there's the pull off, and there's picking speed, of course, but then pulling notes off and hammering on and all that kind of stuff. No one knew how to do that in Alice Springs, but I did. The Christmas holidays went down to Adelaide about 1970, and Adelaide had an absolutely thriving, fantastic music scene. Probably, the advent of the migration and all the wonderful talent that came out of the UK to settle in Adelaide definitely would have a massive influence. So the scene was absolutely abuzz, and that's when I got to see some wonderful players and latched on to ex-Liverpudlian guy called Ronnie Piers. He was just a massive influence on me. Maury Berg was another guy, and learnt so much in such I was just an absolute 16-year-old sponge, and I sort of rock back at Alice Springs and everyone goes, shit, what happened to you? As in sort of improvement-wise. And so it was, once you could see it, I was off and running.
Our guest here on Oz Music Radio Northern Beaches, Ian Moss, legendary, iconic Australian rock guitarist and musician, as we're discussing. Ian's going to be appearing alongside Mark Seymour at Night at the Barracks here in Manly, North Head, Friday, 26 September. Is it fair to say that the really big breakthrough came musically, perhaps for you and the guys with Chisel, with the East album did it? And already at that point, you featured with some singing on that, did you? And even a composition?
Oh, yeah, never before.
Never before. And wasn't there a song called Bow River?
That's the next album. That was the album after East, Circus Animals. And there's another song on there, No Good For You. It was a co-write on Breakfast of Sweethearts album with Don, Dresden Blues.
Excursion into singing on record, was that never before on East, or?
One Long Day, never before was on East. No, One Long Day on the very first album.
Right.
There's one of those, we ended up doing a lot of that stuff where I'd sing the first half, sort of a lower register part of the song, and then Barnes would kick it into gear for the second half when we'd move up, go up a couple of notches in keys and sort of intensity. That's the main one that comes back to me from the very first album. I think there might have been something else.
What brought you into the singing? How did that sort of come about? Because I've always essentially thought of you certainly in the early days as a guitarist, but in your later and current career, you've really blossomed into a singer, haven't you, as well as a songwriter? What drew you into all of that? Was it those early soul sounds you were hearing that you mentioned earlier?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I was probably singing before I was playing guitar. I was singing from the age of 5, doing little, joining in any kind of thing that might have been at primary school in Alice Springs, joining in anything musical that may or may not have been going on as a singer. Definitely, hearing Sam Cooke, all those wonderful Sam Cooke songs in particular, as a kid on the radio, and always singing along to that stuff. So that was there. And then when I joined my first band in Alice Springs as a rhythm guitar player, that sort of lasted about 6 months, and I was just dying to break out and start my own band. So, and it's important if you're going to be singing to actually be thrown in the deep end and start playing and singing at the same time. It can make things a lot easier for latter years. So there I was at 15 years old, teaching the other guys in the band how to play, and by that stage, Hendrix might have been a bit too tricky, but we certainly loved Creedence Clearwater. Right, half our set was Creedence Clearwater Revival, Who'll Stop the Rain, Proud Mary, Fortunate Son, Bad Moon Rising, to name a few.
Our guest here on Oz Music Radio Northern Beaches, Ian Moss, appearing at night at the Barracks Friday, 26 September. Ian,
of course, one of the massive ones for Sam Cooke is A Change Is Gonna Come.
I was born by a river in a little tent. Oh, just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, and I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
I think that after you broke up, well, Cold Chisel broke up for the first time for all the reunions, it took you a number of years to develop into a solo performer, didn't it? About 5 or 6 years, I think, to your first album and first single. What took so long in trying to get yourself together as a solo performer?
Just trying to work out the direction. To be honest, I think that everyone was quite devastated by the ending of Cold Chisel. It was quite almost traumatic. I know Don Walker probably copped it the most because he'd put so much heart and soul into it and probably did the majority of the work and took the majority of the responsibility. He dealt with it by going on this train trip around the world, kind of odd but unique, and flew himself to Vladivostok, way on the east coast of the USSR, as it was back then. Jumped on, did some on a train with a bunch of books, and travelled across Siberia in winter, I think, for a few months, and then ended up in Eastern Europe. And he said, it was just in such a bad way. He couldn't face the sunlight. He'd just sleep all day and get up when it was dark and go to bed just before the sun came up. I might have been doing the similar things, sort of, in a lot of ways. But I mean, I sure it took me 83 days, 6 years or whatever to get Matchbook out there. But the work had started on that well beforehand. I had Telephone Booth and a couple other songs in my set. I was playing live in '85. It took a while to sort out a record deal, and then a bit of a stop and start with different producers.
It was an amazing start you had, because I think it was about 1989, if I'm not mistaken, you came out with your first solo album,
Yeah.
And it was such an amazing success, wasn't it? And particularly with some of the songs. For me, I've always just loved Tucker's Daughter. That's a song that you wrote with Don?
Yeah, that was that was just one of those funny. Like I say, I ended up having producers thrown at me, and finally I had to insist on it. I was going with Chris Lord Algie, who's the guy who produced and engineered Matchbook, and I went off him just because he mixed the Gravity album by James Brown, and it was just like he ended up being the idol of other engineers of the idol mixer. The sound on that was like. And so I just pushed and pushed it. Whatever I got to get this guy involved. And so I'm in Los Angeles and decided on using Chris. While I was nailing down Chris, I was trying to get on with the writing. So Tucker's Daughter is just an interesting little story in that I'd enthusiastically started writing. I was getting all these bits and pieces, thinking there were 3 different songs. Then I realised it was all the same song. So pretty soon I had all the music to. What would end up being Tucker's Daughter, and I was trying to write lyrics, and I had this idea of getting away from boy girl songs and love songs, and trying to write some cool sort of thing about sort of why do we make treaties, and then always end up breaking them, build it up, tear it down, that kind of thing. And that's as far as I got. So Don was back in Australia. This was well before emails and stuff, and I rang him up, and he said, well, just make a cassette of it, sing, give me the music. If you've probably got the melody, if you've got any words at all, just mutter them into the onto the track. And the very first line was I was messing around going, "Hang me, motherfucker," and that obviously tickled his fancy. And 2 weeks later, he came back with the story about Tucker's Daughter.
Yeah, look, it's
and the rest is history.
Is that arguably your most successful single?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Telephone Booth did well, such a beautiful thing. By far, that's the most successful single. Good way to.
That album worked so well for you, didn't it? Didn't only chart well on the single, but you had a 20th anniversary sort of release of that was also successful. Only a few years ago?
Yeah, just that. It turned so it was 1989, so 2019 was the 30th anniversary. Yeah. What do they call it? ARIA Awards back then.
Now, you've made a lot of albums since then. I don't know if I've caught up with it all. Maybe 6, 7, or 8 by now, is it? Or
yeah, something like that. I would include live things. Yeah, probably up somewhere around there.
Got here was around 2008. I don't know what that date is. Where apparently you made some sort of appearance and breakthrough on television as a singer, not a guitarist anymore, and released albums around that time, which were basically you as a singer and a soul singer. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, a show called It Takes Two. Oh God, yeah, some interesting choices of songs there, but a lot of fun. But no, it was by that stage, I think that was about 2008. I did that. Then just before that, I'd recorded it was called Six Strings, which is just me and acoustic guitar recorded live in a pub in Sydney, or a little theatre pub in Sydney. So that's going well, but it seemed like, I just thought of myself as a guitar player, could sing okay, kind of just okay to accompany myself. But yeah, doing that It Takes Two show it seemed to be, after so many years of being in the business, that's when it first started. People seemed to go, oh, you can sing too. So yeah, hence the idea of at the time I went across to New York. Very, very blessed. A record company sent me across there to record. The album was called Soul on West 53rd. It was me doing lots of the covers, including the 2 Sam Cooke songs and lots of great early R&B stuff.
Yeah, that must have been quite an experience. And maybe did it have a sort of an impact on you going over to a music centre like that, working with top people like Danny Korchmar and others? Did that have sort of a lasting impact on you and your shape in music? Or?
Oh yeah, it's one of those things I kind of also just rolled up and wasn't even aware who was going to be playing on my album. But boy, did I have some incredible musicians on the album. And yeah, that was a fantastic experience.
You mentioned an album you recorded when you went a bit acoustic and strumming, or moved away from the guitar and even the soul singing, perhaps. When did you make that move? And have you maintained that sort of interest in recording and performance with acoustic and voice?
Yeah, it's just I thought, oh well, it's another colour on the palette, another way to do things. To be honest, I never imagined, once obviously your first guitar is an acoustic, and you do all your learning, that then you get electric guitars where you always wanted to be, and start trying to copy Hendrix and Richie Blackmore or whoever, and I thought, acoustic. That's something. If I needed a little bit of rhythm on an album, that's the only time I'll pick up an acoustic. But of course, the world is what it was, and when that was the early '90s, when the whole the fashionable boom was on, people doing lots of stuff on acoustic. So just followed suit there, and found it was a really enjoyable thing to do. It was quite a challenge, a good challenge in learning how to, because you're so used to a band covering all the parts. You finally had to figure out a new way to play the songs on acoustic and just be the only guy up there. And it was nerve-wracking at first, but rewarding finally.
Talking here on Radio Northern Beaches Oz Music with Ian Moss, who's appearing at night at the Barracks here in Manly, Friday, 26 September. Ian, is there a track we might share with listeners, and a bit of a recording of yours in that acoustic sort of 90s vein that you put down?
Thunderball from James Bond. On the second album I did in that semi-acoustic, the album is called Let's All Get Together. Thunderball, which is recorded at the same sessions that are recorded, 2005 or something, in a pub in Newtown.
Now, these days, as we move on in our discussion here with Ian Moss on Oz Music Radio Northern Beaches, are you engaging and spending much time in live performances and touring around? Is that something that you like to do or able to do these days?
I'm always going flat out, planning the next gig. Coming up in this summer's a Red Hot Summer tour. Bones is headlining. You've got Icehouse on it, then me with my band, that's electric, 4-piece band. I've just finished what I call the One Guitar, One Night Only tour in May. That was me with a upright bass, jazz piano, and jazz drums.
We hear a lot about, lack of venues and venues closing and concerts closing. You're finding that the scene is reasonably alive enough for you to be moving around and getting enough gigs?
Yeah, certainly not like the old days. Almost every pub on any corner would have a band on any night of the week. Long gone. Fortunate enough to sort of be able to find the suitable gigs, the gigs I want.
I think I read somewhere that a quote attributed to you about you never felt you made your definitive album. Have you just got a new one coming out, or just released a self-titled album, Moss? And does that fit the bill about what you would regard as your definitive work?
Electric album's called Rivers Run Dry. That was recorded in late 21. And the album before that, just self-titled, Ian Moss, released in 2018. Both those albums is where I've contributed immensely to, finally, to actually the writing of the songs that are on the album. I've come pretty close to definitive album, but I'm still keen to keep writing and keep recording.
Is there a song that's a self-titled song off one of those two albums you mentioned that captures, where you think you've got to with your songwriting and singing? Emotion. Right.
State of My Emotion.
Off Rivers Run Dry.
Yeah. Just to give you a bit of background on that, it's something I've had ex-Dragon drummer Kerry Jacobson has been working with me for a long time now, and that's something he and I started writing quite some years ago. Just took us with one of the songs. Quite often you can get so far with a song, and sometimes you really got to make an effort to drag it across the finishing line. That's one of those songs I was just waiting for this one last little bit, and it finally came together just before we started recording when I was recording the Rivers Run Dry album.
Look, it's been a real pleasure and fascinating talking with you. Our guest, Ian Moss, here on Oz Music Radio Northern Beaches. Ian Moss, of course, legendary guitarist, and in his later career, post-Cold Chisel days, very much the singer, the songwriter, and appearing here, Manly, night at the Barrack, Friday, 26 September. Looking forward to catching you at the Barrack shortly, and it's been great talking to you, Ian. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to talk to you, Michael. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Australia, the lucky country. We've got meat pies. We've got the world's best beer. But most importantly, top of the list, we've got Radio Northern Beaches 88.7, 90.3. Now hitting the entire world on www.rnb.org.au.